Okay, so to get started, I'd like for each of you to take just 2 or 3 minutes, introduce yourself, tell us what you've been doing the last 10 years and what your general focus is. Any order is fine.
Okay, I'll jump in first. I just drove almost 2,000 miles. I have a vehicle full of plant material, figs, mulberries, aloe vera plants, even some Bodhi tree material that I'm going to be cloning and growing all around this house here in Texas. I had to move out of California. I've been there since 1980. And it's just an oppressive business environment. I want to be in a happy environment where you can actually run a business and the government isn't constantly knocking at your door. So I moved to Texas, very excited about it. What I've been doing the last about 3 or 4 years is really focusing on bringing people through detoxes and cleanses and a lot of water fasting. And that's one thing that Gabriel and I just love so much is when you really get right down to the brass tacks. It's all about the cleansing and the fasting, and especially the water fasting, which has been a really fun thing for all the groups we've been leading over the years. And I want to get into that. You can't just jump into it, of course. You have to work at it and you get better at it as time goes on. But it's been the big focus. Obviously, I'm still bringing people to vegan and raw food, especially with those detoxes. And it's been really an interesting process of just changing my approach, especially with social media, because it's not as a free of an environment. They censor you. I got deleted off of YouTube in 2017 for no reason, no strikes, no warnings. So I'm trying to just bring that message out in different ways now through different types of social media. Still having a lot of fun doing it. So that's what I've been doing the last 10 years.
Okay, I'll go next.
Go next.
I'm very pleased to be on this panel. And Steve, thank you for inviting us here. I can't remember the last 10 years. No, seriously, it's been pretty busy. Creating books. My latest book, Into the Nothing, is my 13th book. We just moved to Israel from Patagonia, Arizona, where I've been since 1993. Had a holistic health center there. And now we're kind of reaching out more worldwide, and still, of course, with all the conferences and stuff, the internet works quite well. I'm guided by what feels like my mission at that time. So my mission was to do the community in Arizona from 1993 till now, so it's quite a few years. And now it's not clear, but I just know it's something I need to do. In the meantime, spending a lot of time teaching, mostly with spiritual work. And also right now we're running a fast. This is the fourth day of a fast. It's interestingly enough, and I'm of course fasting with the group. My wife and I are doing that. And like David said, for me, everything is a spiritual joy. So we're doing a lot of spiritual teaching, awakening the Kundalini energy and the spiritual energies in different ways. Like David, I've been doing shamanic work, since the 70s, doing a lot of work that is a little bit more esoteric, dealing with a variety of things that affect people that aren't usually talked about. And at the same time, myself, I'm about 99% live food diet. And I just one meal a day at this point. My weight stays the same. And contrary to like some people are saying, oh, if you're vegan, you're going to be weak and emaciated. This morning I did my usual 1,350 push-ups. So I'm here almost as in a sense, a testimony to the power of the live food vegan diet as something that if you balance it right, with the right understanding, you can get stronger, more flexible, and continue to have a good time. You got to have a good time. That's really important. Spiritual joy is key to everything. If you aren't enjoying it, then you have to look at that.
All right, I guess it's my turn to go. Well, thank you, Stephen, and everybody else who's involved with this program for inviting me again back this year. last 10 years has just been a joy as well. We're taking our Sanjevani Integrative Medicine Health and Lifestyle Center to another level. I wrote a book called An Inflammation Nation in 2016, and it was very popular. It was very important, but even more so this last year, 2020, the world came to the understanding, inflammation from a virus called COVID. And so, even more so important of looking at plant-based diets, lowering inflammatory responses, increasing immune system functioning. So that's what I focus on in my practice. I use an integrative medicine, evidence-based approach. And we use a lot of functional, we use a lot of traditional Ayurvedic, Chinese medicine, acupuncture, a lot of things that David and Gabriel would also kind of speak about or also incorporate somewhat in their practices as well. But from my perspective, what we look at is in the last 10 years is formulation of products, looking at clinical trials and kind of pushing the envelope of making not only just food as medicine, but how do we take plant medicines more further. And how we can establish and bring about traditional medicines that have been used around in cultures for centuries or millennia, as we would say, and bring them to light of there's a wisdom in the plants, there's a wisdom in historical use of natural medicines. And so as long as we can look at the potency, purity, safety, and efficacy is what we do, and kind of introduce it more from a scientific way of doing clinical studies and trials and publications, then it really kind of advances this whole idea of like eating your food as medicine, but also sometimes you need to use those medicines that are coming from foods rather than just from pharmaceuticals.
Is there anything any of you want to say about the last 15 months regarding COVID? Anything, lessons that are clear that we should all learn? Anything that we now know about health, prevention? Is there anything you want to comment about the last 15 months since COVID started that we now understand today? Any good lessons that we could all learn from this that you want to pass on to us?
Who wants to take that one first?
Go ahead and go first. I'm ready to go.
I'll go first. Well, it's certainly a lot of lessons learned about the nature of our society, the nature of our medical system, the nature of the respiratory. I mean, we've all gotten some kind of incredible education on cytokine storms, on mRNA. I mean, it's an unbelievable blast of information that all of us have been exposed to over the last 15 months. And it's a little bit overwhelming if you're not a professional in this area. It's like, it's just crazy. So I've always gone back to the basics, which is oxygen, right? Oxygen, ozone, and cleaning your body with oxygen. Hydrogen, which is, actually we'll go to carbon, and cleaning your body with carbon, which is charcoal, C60, and essentially using Earth's most negatively charged compound, charcoal, as a detoxification agent on the regular. Not the only one, but a good one. And my favorite personally, actually. And then hydrogen. And so cleaning the body with those three basics. Hydrogen, depleted deuterium water, and that breakthrough. I'd love to hear Gabriel on that one. I'm sure you're aware of it. Very interesting subject. A favorite subject of mine, something I really like to dig into when I'm water fasting, is just doing lots of deuterium depleted water. And that's something we can get into. So I go back to those three basics for cleanse and detox with everybody, regardless of what their immune system is doing or anything, so we can get to a baseline of being healthy. Now, of course, you've got to move. You've got to squish your tissue out. You got to do your hot colds. You got to get inverted. You've got to do your herbs. You've got to make sure you have a nice protocol of, I like to call it electronic medicine, pulsed electromagnetic field devices, zappers, just cool little, the little toys everybody has. I was just with Dr. Pai, and he had a Beamer, and he gave me a ride in a Beamer, which I just love so much, and helped me drive 15 hours. Dr. Pai drove 15 hours after that. That was so epic, and got to Austin at 5 a.m. At any rate, we've all had to learn how to get back to baseline and then build up health. And the big thing, I think, for just that I want to impart on everybody is the herbalism, and where we are with the herbalism is really profound. Once you've hit that baseline, once you've detoxified your body, you're in good shape, you're feeling great all the time, you don't have sluggishness in your digestion, and your bowels have been emptied and cleaned out now for weeks or months or years, then we start to work on the herbalism to modulate that immunity, not just push it up with things like echinacea or garlic, immune system stimulants, but things that modulate the immunity, so we find that golden place like the adaptogens provide us. And of course, being with Dr. Pai, he's into Ayurveda. I love Tulsi. I grow Tulsi. I love ashwagandha. I grow ashwagandha. I love Shilajit. I'm crazy about it. I do it every day. I know Gabriel Cousens also. He loves those things too. And we also love some of the great Chinese herbs as well. And we love turmeric and we love boswellia. So all of those things is where I do the fine tuning for immunity. And that's, so what this really has happened the last 15 months has been a huge opportunity for me to get the message that I've been trying to get out all along out with people listening in different ways they've never listened before. So that's a little bit of what I've learned over the last 15 months and what has been, I think, a very important message. And it really comes down to the cleansing and the herbalism first.
So it's been an interesting ride with all this. What I really appreciated is people are now understanding that the terrain, your basic health, is what's most important, not the germ. And that was material since the 1880s. So what next is first build the terrain. So what we notice is that people who are healthy at any age really don't have anything to worry about. I mean, now as a psychiatrist, I'm certainly aware of this has been a fear-demic, blown way out of proportion to manipulate consciousness. So as a person that works with consciousness, a lot of my work has been helping people let go of their fear, because this has brought up fear of death and a variety of other things, fear of the unknown. And so part of the work, a big part of the work, is psycho-spiritual work to help people come to peace with what's going on. Fear really weakens the immune system. So I've been working at that level with groups and talking to groups about the COVID. I am impressed how smart the globalists are. To design what they design, you have to be kind of brilliant, to be honest, but brilliant on the dark side, but that's the way it is. But so the fun is figuring out what they did, how they did it, and how to, in a sense, antidote it. That's secondary to what we've been teaching all along, which is build the terrain, build the terrain. And I don't mean just with diet, but David mentioned the exercise and the breathing. I do pranayama every day, or 6 days a week. And relationships are very important. People who are in some sort of connected relationship live longer and are healthier. That's a really interesting thing. In fact, people age 65 and over, there's been a significant increase in people getting married or remarried at that age. There's some awareness that it actually makes a difference in your health, and it really does. It makes a significant statistical difference. So I'm not saying getting married is medicine, but it's really good for the heart. And what's good for the heart is good for your health. So all these things are shifting in our society, which is really, really good. I don't enjoy the fact that people are miserable, but it's been very interesting to figure out the games that they created with this and do the counterpoints. I'll just put it that way. And new things are being discovered about the spike protein and this going on, that going. So it's that part is interesting. The psycho-spiritual part is interesting, but the biggest thing is build the terrain, build your health on all the levels. And just like David was saying, people are listening a lot more to that now because they're worried, they're scared. So to me, that's been a really opportunity with this scaredemic to help people really wake up and start getting much more involved with the quality of their health and moving back from fear into joy, into spiritual joy. So a lot more people are interested in meditation. And since I teach that all the time, that's great, so it builds. So people need to see a more holistic approach, and that's what's being, the door is opening in that way for people to wake up, pay attention. So in terms of my work, and I think our work here, this has been a real benefit in terms of helping people wake up.
So what I've learned in the last 16 months is that I think what most people would understand is that Americans are not as healthy as they proclaim to be. We've come to this place where we've been sold, or we rightfully so. We used to be number one in many things, but when it comes to our health, and when you hear my lecture on coming soon on Saturday, you'll learn we're 46 out of 48 industrial nations in terms of chronic disease outcome. We spent $4.1 trillion, and we're 4% of the world's population, but we're 24% of the COVID problems, right? And 570,000 deaths, still from that. So what it shows that we're not as healthy as we think. And so everything that Gabriel and David are talking about on the level is absolutely true, is that we have to look at, in my book, when I talk about the 10 steps, like how do you prevent, reverse, and treat diseases, is by following the epigenetics, right? We have to change our epigenetics: diet, lifestyle, environment, belief system, right? And that's through plant-based diets, it's through detoxification, it's through keeping your inflammation down through the diet, and also taking natural anti-inflammatories and things that increase the immune system. But what we see all across the board is that Americans are not as healthy as they proclaim to be. And so I was just reading that, there's 125 studies that come out every day on COVID. I read 10. That's the max I can read. Otherwise I'm really tired. And so when we're looking at just recently hospital administration and admissions with patients who are 18 to 49, the number one comorbidity that they're coming in from is obesity. So when we look at this concept of obesity, what happens with obesity? So obesity, we also have other, glycemia problems, which is glucose problems, cardiovascular problems, kidney problems. Each of those are a comorbid condition risk factor by themselves. But right now, I believe 42% of Americans now are overweight, 9% are morbidly obese, meaning, really heavy. So 9% is like 27 million Americans are morbidly obese, right? So we have to look at, we are at risk of viruses or any other disease, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, stroke, from having us as a target. And so I think the goal is to, moving forward is reestablishing, what's the same thing is what I tell everybody, whether it's COVID, whether it's cancer, or chronic disease, you have to do these steps. You have to change your lifestyle. You have to change the epigenetics. If you change the epigenetics, like Gabriel said, you are in a healthier position if you get sick to recover, or not even to get sick at all, or to have minimum side effects and chronic conditions going forward. But right now we're seeing 30% long hauler syndrome of all ages. And it just shows us that there's this chronic inflammatory insult that has occurred from this virus. So we have to look at how do we lower inflammation, and how do we get our immune system stronger? How do we balance our microbiome through the foods, through what we're doing? And also, how do we reduce the stress? How do we reduce the emotional inflammation that we've now endured politically, environmentally? Everything has just been kind of a polarization, I think, in the country. And I think the idea of coming together and understand this is it is a global pandemic, but we have to understand a reflection of what do we need to do to become healthier as a population? What do we need to do to take care of our neighbors? What do we need to do to take care of our community and in the environment? And these are things that I think, growing from this pandemic, we got to move forward in a way that we're doing better than what we were before it. So I always think of anybody that has an illness like a cancer, we don't want to make them a cancer survivor. We want to turn them into a cancer thriver. They have to be living better than what they were before. And I think as a country, and I think as a global community, hopefully we are going to be moving forward where now maybe we don't take things for granted. Maybe we don't throw away stuff. Maybe we recycle. Maybe we'll eat a little bit better. Maybe we'll exercise a little bit more. Maybe we'll do more pranayama and yoga and meditation. These are the things that we should be doing. And sometimes it takes this whole shake and rattle at the expense of loss of life and troubling the economy to sometimes shake our foundation and say, hey, we were going in the wrong direction. We were just thinking of people making money and Wall Street and, stocks and bonds and whatever. But the average person was not going far. We were very unhealthy as a population. And I think we were sold a perception of the American dream, and it became a nightmare. And so hopefully we can rebuild that dream. Just like Gabriel and David were saying, we have to restart from the foundation. So that's what I learned over the last 16 months.
I just want to add one thing, as I have worked with a lot of people in their late teens, and particularly girls, and the suicide rate actually is dramatically increased with kids. Like, I shouldn't say kids, with teens. 12 years to 24 actually is a range. It's more than tenfold. And so what we're also looking at is a lack of meaning in life. Because what the teens are reflecting, they reflect the societies, and there's no future. And so this is a very, very serious problem. And most of the people I see who've come to me are suicidal, cutting themselves, doing things to really harm themselves. And it can be turned around. But the key is our society. Okay, COVID is not the cause of this, but it's a reflection of a lack of meaning and value and purpose in life. So one of the bigger pictures, if we look at the suicide, which again is, I think it's increased 47% for teenagers, is how do we as elders, don't take that personally, but as elders in the society, provide something for the younger people. And I've worked with different groups of teens, so I have a particular tendency to want to help that way. And so that's another thing I want to put in. Meaning, value, direction, purpose in life is lost in our society. I'll just put it that way. And what I've seen is the teens respond to kind of spiritual, meaningful things. Okay, and that's important to consider. I'll just leave it like that.
I'm
We
so
have
glad
a
you brought that
variety of
up,
programs, but
Gabriel.
that's
That's such an important point. I think it's an absolute epidemic, and I've been spending a lot of times with kids, and kids age 4 to 24, actually, in that range, and just giving them any kind of spiritual tips of this or that, things to look for, things to inspire the magical reality around them, really is appreciated by kids. I've noticed a big change in that. The kids appreciate your time more and really want to learn a lot about spiritual realities. And I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, I think, from that perspective is one thing that COVID did inappropriately, is when we had, we're social beings. And so, although we're Zooming, which is great so that people all around the world could watch this program, but also we need to touch people. We need to be in physical, we're not supposed to be living in isolation forever. And so, it is the stressors, the depression, the anxiety, everything has gone up. But I think when it comes to children, we have to be looking at, technology is great, but also sometimes technology is now, overtaken this personality where I see children all the time where they would just text behind, on tables in schools. They just text from one side of the table, so they don't communicate. Everybody's just texting each other, right? And we're not talking. We're not actually communicating. And so we, the way I look at things is kind of going back traditional. Is like there should be a playground we should play. There should be toys. People would be outside. But now everybody's just on the gaming and all. It's nice. It's technology. But I think we're losing touch of like earth and natural things, and kind of going back to where that's where the exploration of the mind and exploration of the soul is there, because you're actually in tune with your environment. I think right now, with the more virtual reality go, it just becomes more virtual, and then we're outside the realm of realness of what our environment is.
Okay, thanks. Okay, next question. Regarding juice fasting and water fasting. Right now, I'm on day 15 of a green juice fast. So the question I guess our audience would like to know is, how can or should they incorporate green juice fasting or water fasting into their life? How often should someone do it? Is it safe to do alone? What's the benefit? Is this something you should do once a month, once a year? Tell us what we should know about fasting, ideally from someone's home. So not everyone can make it to a fasting retreat. What is the best way to get the benefits of either green juice fasting or water fasting? How often, when, what wisdom, how can we benefit from fasting, and what is the benefits?
Okay, I'll jump at that one first. We've been doing 4 or 5 a year. I really recommend 4 a year for people who are sincerely interested in their health and doing them at the changes of the seasons. So, for example, right, we just did one at the equinox, or really the equilux, the equal day and night. That's we surround for those 3 weeks of cleansing that time of the change of the seasons. That one's a particularly good one because it's spring. You're coming into spring. It's spring cleaning. And what we like to do is we like to get that first week where you bring your calories down. We get them on raw food. We try to get them on one solid meal a day that first week, and then bring the calories down through that first week. Second week, it's all liquids, and then you end up on green juices towards the end. I usually give people a break the first few days, but by the time we get to day like 5, 6, or 7, they got to be on the juices. They got to be on the green juices, things that are not rocking their blood sugar. That's a big and important part of prepping yourself for water fasting. Is you don't want to be suddenly spiking your blood sugar on day, say, 14 of a cleanse and day 7 on liquids. You want to have even blood sugar, and that's where the green juice comes in. Then we go to the water fast on the 3rd week. That pattern, I've worked that out over the years. Gabriel and I have done many fasts over the years, and we love it. I mean, he's doing it right now. It's a passion of love. It's a thing it's in your heart or your soul. And I love bringing people into it. It's so cool to see people on their first day of water fasting ever, and their second day ever. They thought they couldn't do it. Is it better to do it alone? Never, ever. It's always better together. It's always better together. I love doing fasts with people from all over the world. And I also love challenging myself on each fast, and that's what I recommend for people who are doing this 4 times a year, which we do. And that's, you've got to challenge yourself. So I'll just keep doing my normal work. I will not change anything. I'll just do the whole thing that I normally do, but no food or water, and very little water too. I like doing a lot of dry fasting, but you have to have some water. And again, that's for more advanced students. But the water fasting to me is when I just got to lay this out. It's such a great term. I just love this term. It comes from the old books. You're on God's operating table. God is at work on you and fixing everything. And you're just getting sorted out your body, mind. You're getting sorted out your emotions. You're getting sorted out your spirit. It's epic. So that's my 2 cents on fasting and cleansing 4 times a year if you're really serious.
Looks like we're going in order here. So next, I've been fasting since 1983. I started my first fast, which was a 40-day fast. I've explored different things. I've done a 21-day water fast, and looking at different things and seeing people who have done different kinds of fasts. I'm right now, we have to actually say, well, what is a minimum fast? Because people say, well, I did a 1-day fast or 3-day fast. So physiologically, we don't begin the process of autolysis, which is breaking down dead and dying cells and building new cells, really until the 2nd or 3rd day. Some people start at 10 hours or 24 to 48 hours. So for me, a minimum fast is 7 days. Now, how do I get there? It's the first few days, your body's changing its metabolism from carbohydrate metabolism. And then day 3 and 4 are very typical of more detox. And day 5 or 6, the toxins are coming out of the brain and everything's working better. So 7 days also helps, particularly the colon detox, which is in most people pretty toxic. So that's the first thing, just kind of looking at the fast, whether you're doing water or juice. Now there are advantages to both. And so I've combined it a little bit, and I do green juice half diluted. Like David pointed out, I don't do any fruit juice anymore. I mean, we learn because people's blood sugars were just all over the place. And so I dilute the juice in half. And that's a kind of the baseline that most people can do. Then people do a few days of water in the midst of all that if they choose. But fasting really, again, what David suggests it's a detox physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And it's a way of deepening your connection with the divine. It's a way of reconnecting with your soul. That's a big issue today. So people, because of the way we're living, because everything's going on, people have gotten a little disconnected from their soul. So this is a way of reconnecting to your soul. It's also a way of reconnecting to meaning and value and purpose in your life. I call it sacred design. So I ask the question to people like, let's think about the sacred design. We have a society that takes us away from a lot of meaning and value. It's like, well, we're here to get in touch with our sacred design. Also, people are knocked out of their rhythms, normal rhythms. So fasting gives an opportunity to come back to your normal rhythms, your normal life rhythms. And believe it or not, it helps regrow your brain. It actually stimulates neuron hormones, growth hormones, and neural-derived factors that literally regrow your brain. Now, just as a point, most people's brains shrink about 4.4% a year. So fasting is one of the few things that actually grows your brain. That's actually really important, okay? And it turns on a lot of the hormones that rebuild your body, but particularly the brain is being very, very positive affected. Neuro-derived growth factor is another thing that happens. So many physiological changes are happening in a very good way. Obviously, you get rid of physical toxins, but we also focus on emotional, mental, and spiritual toxins. So in our fast, we call them spiritual fasts because we're meditating twice a day and we're doing a variety of kind of sharing and talking, because doing it in community does make a difference. So those are some of the factors that we're really rebuilding a new body. Now, I'm just going to slip in something a little bit about COVID, because with fasting, and this isn't proven, but both the mRNA and the DNA do alter your chromosomes. They both are able to get in. I won't go through the whole story of how mRNA does it, but it gets in and it reprograms your DNA. Now, those are abnormal cells. In the process of fasting, we activate what I call apoptosis to destroy the abnormal cells and to activate the growth of healthy cells. So we have a process now that can actually help get rid of the abnormal cells that have come from the vaccine primarily, or from the COVID infection. That's actually really, really important, because we're rebuilding cells, but we're eliminating the unhealthy cells, and a COVID infected cell is unhealthy. So that's another important thing. Now, another thing that happens is that the COVID affects the brain. About a third of the people, either from the vaccination or from getting COVID, have disorganized brain function and get cloudy and confused and so forth. And the fasting helps reactivate the normal neurotransmitters and literally help the brain come back to normal. So that's a little added extra in today's world. Also, fasting helps with longevity and general well-being. So those are just some of the insights into fasting that are good. Most people aren't thinking about fasting as a way of preventing or dealing with COVID, but it's not the treatment or cure. We're not making a claim like that. I'm just saying it helps eliminate the pathological cells that have been created and rebuild the new cells. So that's got to be good.
So when it comes to, from my perspective, when it comes to fasting, we don't do much like program fasting. Most people have a center or something like that. I do recommend when people do that, they have a physician follow them, because most people that I see are on prescription medications, right? And so it's something that to follow if someone's taking like blood pressure or thyroid or, or some kind of a blood sugar product to help reduce their diabetes. So it needs to be followed. But I'm not against fasting. We see wonderful results from fasting. From my perspective of all those kind of fasts, it's really it's resting the body, right? You're putting your body in the most anti-inflammatory state because you're not putting anything pro-inflammatory in, right? And also, as Gabriel said, it's like a spiritual cleanse, it's an emotional cleanse, yeah, because it's a challenge because we're so used to putting these things in our body, right? For all sorts of reasons, good or bad, right? Because everybody has vices and there's addictions and there's foods and there's things that we're craving like sugar or fats or salts or just bad foods, for example. And so it is a way to do a mental and spiritual cleanse. But I always like to have someone follow that because sometimes people can go. I think a lot of people want to go extreme. I'm always like start low, goes like build into that ability that you can do a fast, an appropriate fast that he's talking about or David's talking about. Or if you go to a program, then there's people that are following you, they're measuring it so that you're not, because a lot of people like to do these things at home. And I think you can do these things, but a lot of people want to just start tomorrow and they're like, oh, I heard he did a 21-day fast. You're not going to do that tomorrow, you know what I'm saying? But you got to build into that. So I'm really like that. Well, one of the things that we do that's a different type of detoxification, we do panchakarma, and that's just the traditional Ayurvedic detox, and that's something that we specialize in our clinic. So it's a different way of that's the original, we call it one of the original detoxification systems of treatment Ayurvedically, and that's a specialty that we offer. That's a little bit of a different way, but it's like, how do we cleanse the tissues from head to toe, all the way in from a variety of techniques and procedures and practices. That's kind of where my training comes from. So I don't do much, so I can't speak. I do definitely recommend people trying fasting and doing it, but we like to do things a little bit more gently and a little bit like pushing things through the tissues and out of the body in a little bit more of a systematic way. But definitely, I think people should do some type of fasting multiple times a year. We do panchakarma, like the day was talking about, change of the seasons, right? So same thing, like the cleanses are always good at a time of a season change, and then that's where most people or most countries, there's some kind of holiday that's also a change of something. So I think historically we've been doing these things for in cultures all over. In America, we just haven't done that appropriately, and then we kind of force it. So I think if it becomes a practice, just like everything else, then that becomes part of your health regimen.
Can you just make sure that no one gets themselves into trouble? Because I don't want anyone to hear go on a 21-day water fast at home alone. So just give whatever disclaim. What should we do to make sure that we heard your advice, but then no one misinterpreted it and does something that can get them in trouble?
Well, I think one thing is what was already said. What Pai said is that it's good to have someone following you with the fast. The classical way would be, an experienced health practitioner following you with the fast. That's probably the best thing, particularly if you're new at it. Generally, I recommend. I recommend obviously working with, a professional who knows about these things, because there's a lot of things that can come up.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want people to be afraid of fasting, because people have been doing it for, maybe 5,000 years. It's the oldest health technique there is, period. It rebuilds two things. We're going to call it vital life force. That's what the Greeks talked about. It builds the vital life force, and that helps cleanse. That's the power behind the cleansing: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Cleansing is the fasting activates the vital life force. The other thing it does, from the spiritual point of view, is it makes it easier for the Kundalini energies to move through the subtle channels, which we call nadis, the 72,000 nadis, the three main channels. So in our setting where people are getting the awakening of the Kundalini from the spiritual approaches we take it, it's a lot easier to awaken that spiritual energy when your nadis are not clogged up with junk food and meat, fish, chicken, the energies of death, and so forth and so on. So there's two then energies that get activated, vital life force and the Kundalini energy. And that's another reason why it's good to have a supervisor in some way. And it's also good, as David pointed out, to be in a social group so you have support as well. Those are just some of the kind of thoughts, but this is not new. Fasting is old, and it's reliable. And it's fun because when you clear the toxins out of the brain, you start to get really, really happy and high. If you aren't that way already. If we're really living this lifestyle, we're happy all the time. You know, there's a spiritual joy happening all the time. We don't have to fast to do that, but at the same time, you do that. It does add to that joy. So we fast. I fast twice a year, moving till 3 times a year. I have done 6 times a year, explored, and everybody's body's a little different, but a minimum of 2, and like David was talking about 4, I think that's very valid and very good as well. But often for people just to do 2, it's kind of an effort in their lives.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question is, we have a 10-day conference. We have 39 speakers. A large number of them are talking about diet and nutrition. So a lot of us have heard information about diet, and we have our own intuitive feeling about diet. And we have a pretty good idea, and we're pretty confident that we have some plan, or we know what the plan should be. But there's another area where we are feeling totally wild, the Wild West. And that's when it comes to nutritional supplements. Most of us are getting our information from anywhere. Everyone's got a probiotic, everyone's got an enzyme. Most of us just don't intuitively understand. Like if you package up ashwagandha, I can understand that because it's an herb. But most supplements, we're really feeling a little helpless. So what would be really great is if you could, from all of your years of experience, tell us what are, in your opinion, the most important non-negotiable supplements that you believe each of us, if we had a pen and paper and we're going to go out tomorrow and buy it, what are the supplements, the top 10 supplements that you think every one of us, or if you want to separate from men and women as specifically as you can, that we should be including in our life on a regular basis? And I know you don't have blood tests and you don't know what we're deficient in. So just do the best to guide us of what should we do. We really are really not clear. Please, each of you tell us your list of your top 10, and you can go beyond 10 if you would like.
That's such a great question. It's the question of the hour. It's always the question of the day, and almost the question of every conference. What do we recommend our protocols? Well, I did a 15-hour. I've been driving. So I've been sitting, and I thought I'm just going to really go heavy on Dr. Pai's Bosmeric. And so he's got a really incredible product. In fact, I'm sure I have some here. I do actually. I should show it. I should probably get up now. I've been I'll change my position here. Okay, and I'll show you what some of the things I do. I have them here with me right next to me, actually, because I just walked in the house after all this driving, and I wanted to do an experiment. So after I left Dr. Pai's, drove 15 hours, and I took 12 of his Bosmerics, and I wanted to see what the effect was. It was profound. I mean, I've taken the product before. I love the product, but it was profound. Because when you're sitting all the time driving, you get inflamed. Your body's not moving. It's really not a healthy thing to be doing. And I got up the next day and I was popping. I was just rocking it. So, okay, let me just get a few things out. I'm reaching into my grab bag here of all the goodies. Okay, here we go. Oh, no, not that one. Let's see these. Nope. Okay, hold on. Oh, it's on this side. Okay, got that. So, okay, there's the Bosmeric right there. And I really appreciate that product, Dr. Pai. What an amazing, this is a clinical product. So this is not something where it was just like, well, let's just throw these ingredients together and then let's see what happens. It's been well worked out. And I'll let Dr. Pai talk about that. And that's a preeminent type of anti-inflammatory with the key ones in it. And the big heavy four in this one is Boswellia, which is frankincense, which I absolutely am in love with frankincense. I've grown frankincense for years. I eat frankincense resin. I'm crazy about that tree. I just am totally all the way into it. Of course, turmeric. I'm also a crazy turmeric grower and love turmeric massively. And it's got the C3, which I'll let Dr. Pai talk about. And then what else is the other one's ginger, of course. And then the piperine or the bioperine, the black pepper extract that is in this product. So that's one that I use and I like, and I really went heavy on it. Never did that many actually before, and I loved it. I love the Dragon Herbs products and certain products that Ron Teagarden has put together over the years I really like. And because I injured a tendon in my leg, I've been doing a lot of Frame Builder, which is basically a Eucomia formula. Now I'm going to say a word that's just crazy because it's such a weird spelling. It's like Eucharist. EUCOMMIA is one of my favorite herbs in the world. I really don't take supplements. Like I don't really take like vitamin C or, I might do like a B vitamin thing, a squirt deal that I do, which I really like because it's just like an energy pickup. But I'm not like a person who takes like multivitamins every day. I haven't never done that. I haven't done that in 30 years. So what I'm into is more the superfoods and the herbalism to get all of those things. The Eucomia formulas like this are really good if you like injured your leg like I did with my leg. So that's something I'll do. Another thing that a big category that I'm really into is here we go, enzyme category. Now I was just with these guys, the Sun Warrior guys. So I'm taking their enzymes right now, but it always changes. And this is formulated by Victoris, who Gabriel knows Victoris very well. I don't know if you know Victoris really well, Sunil, but Victoris is an old time raw food superhero. And he formulated these enzymes for Sunwear, and you see how much into enzymes I am currently into. There's nothing left, and I like to take enzymes with everything. I like taking them all day long. Some of the things that I've heard over the years, some of the experiences I've had over the years of people beating like deadly pancreatic cancer at the last minute, 4-stage terminal case, and literally reversing their way all the way out of that with 100 enzymes a day or more and other protocols. But those things those are real life experiences, people that I know. So that kind of caused me to go like, whoa, I like enzymes. Maybe I should do more. And you could see I've been doing more. Other things that I really like are other herbal formulas. Like I really like, I'm a big fan of all adaptogens, huge fan of all adaptogens. So I'll go for Vedic formulas of adaptogens, like a Tulsi, Ashwagandha, Shilajit, turmeric combo or something like that. And then I'll also do the Chinese formulas, and I'll also do the native formulas from the Amazon. It just depends on where I'm at. If I'm in the tropics, then I do more tropical stuff. If I'm in Houston, Texas, it'll be more stuff that grows here. If I'm in like New Mexico, northern New Mexico, it's more of stuff for that environment. One of the great adaptogens, and I think all three of us are big fans of this one, and another one that I do, it's a big one on my list, is Shilajit. And Shilajit is the black resin of the Himalayas. It's actually found in many mountain ranges all over the world. And one of the things I spent a long time really looking for was the best. What's the best one out there? And I think all three of us agree it's pure black. That's my favorite by far, best testing, best research. And so over the years, I've been burned a few times. So I test. I got to know. And I'll let Dr. Pai come in on that. He's a clinician, so he knows he's got to test, because otherwise it's all just guesswork. What are some other things? I mean, I'll do probiotics, but do I really think if I take probiotic capsules, that's working? I'm not a big, huge believer that that's the best thing ever. I think the best thing ever is you take those probiotics and ferment them on your cabbage or your cucumber or your onion, and then you let that grow and you let that ferment. In particular, L. plantarum, that's a real strong one, real easy for fermented vegetables, and do it that way. So every capsule to me of a really good probiotic will culture well. That's what I use it for. So that's another category, probiotics, but I don't really take probiotics. I just use them as a starter, if you're following the logic there. What are some of the other things? I mean, I like carrying liquid tinctures, and I really like reishi as a tincture, especially the real strong bitter reishi. If I'm out and about, and I need some kind of a pickup or something that's just going to really deliver the goods. Another one that's really like that, and I really like a lot, is goji schizandra combination together, and tinctures are a really nice one. And it just gives you a nice uplift and a real, it just carries a lot of bang for the buck. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is we're trying to actually, food. Okay, yeah, I'm going to eat some avocados. Okay, yeah, I ate, you can see here, I ate 2 mangoes I ate 3 mangoes on the drive over here. And so this is all stained in mango juice. But am I really convinced that that's going to get me all the minerals that I need? Like Hanuman got all his, his nutrition from his mangoes that he loved and his raw food that he loved. And no, I'm not convinced of that for a human being. So I've got to get the superfoods and the super herbs in, not only for their secondary medicinal benefits, but they're just straight nutritional benefits. And I'll just give you one last piece on this. We actually had a really wonderful research project that was done out of Toronto at Maxim Analytics Laboratory out of Toronto. And Ramiz Saeed, who was a friend of mine there, he actually found that reishi mushroom contains the highest amount of silver of any single food in the world. How interesting is that? And then with chaga, he was the guy who found out that it contains more cesium, a highly alkaline, very powerful cancer-fighting mineral, and potassium and rubidium. Those 3 higher than anything ever tested. Chaga mushroom. So that's why I take these things. I want to get the full spectrum of all the minerals and all the nutrients and all the natural vitamins in their natural complex. Okay, so that was my spiel. I'll turn that over to either Dr. Cousens or Dr. Pai.
David, one more thing. I know you've in the past spoken highly about coated silver, charcoal, and mushrooms. Can you touch on those 3 also? How you feel about those?
Oh, I love those. In fact, I'm so glad to be home because I've been out of charcoal. I was out. My jar here, I think I got the empty jar in here somewhere. It's been empty, and I've been dealing with that. And so I've been like, oh my God, I'm going to finally get back to my charcoal. I love doing 500 milligrams of charcoal every morning. In fact, what I've been doing instead has been enzymes. Every morning I've been getting up and doing enzymes on an empty stomach. I really like enzymes on an empty stomach a lot. Oh, yep, there's the empty. So there's an empty. That's my charcoal container. So that's a big one, and I'm a real fan of that. Another big one, I'm a big fan. I do coated silver every day, and that's something it's like subconscious. I just literally put a drop or 2 or 3. Lately I've been doing 3 into my water and just drink that down. And this seems to have an effect on my nervous system, actually. And I will say 2 things about coated silver. One is it is immunological, yes, but it's, for me, the reason why I take it is it's more sharpening my nervous system. Another thing I've noticed about coated silver that's miraculous, and this is truly miraculous, is you can put it directly into open wounds. I had my assistant sister cut off the end of her finger, and I showed up right after that, maybe 45 minutes after that. I said, let's unwrap the whole thing and let's get the silver right in there. And I was happen to be staying at her house, so I just every day put the silver in there. It was completely healed within a week. Very miraculous things I've seen like that with that coated silver topically. It's chapped lips, put it on there, done. That's the end of chapped lips, one treatment. It's crazy stuff like that. So I carry it as part of my little it's in my first aid kit. I always have my little, from my dad, I got that idea of having a doctor's bag, and it's one of those things that's in there. And there was one more thing that you mentioned, Stephen. What was the other thing?
Mushrooms.
Oh, mushrooms. I'm always doing reishi mushrooms. Let me show you, this is a really good reishi capsule that I'm doing right now, and I'm really loving a lot. You can see how dark it is. It's just phenomenal. And what's going on here is mostly reishi spore. This is mostly crack cell reishi spore. And I love that. Any reishi product, any chaga product, any lion's mane product, any Tremides product, I love them all. And I like actually doing them in multiple combinations, but you can't do everything every day. So, some days you are, more focused on the wild mushroom teas, and other days I'm more focused on another aspect of the miracle world of medicinal mushrooms. There's about 24 of them in the overall list, from maitake to cordyceps to agaricus blazei to Tremides to chaga to reishi to birch polypore, and it just goes auricularia, and it goes on and on and on, and they're all awesome.
When you say charcoal, that sounds weird to us, and it sounds like you go to a barbecue and you take a piece of charcoal. What are you actually saying?
Okay, so activated coconut charcoal is the most common type of charcoal product on the market. This has been used since the beginning of time with ancient human beings as the most preeminent and most useful detoxification and actually most safe detoxification agent. If you're going to eat like zeolite rock as a caveman, it doesn't really work out very well. But if you're going to eat charcoal, it really does work out really well. It's really easy. You just basically charcoal the birch, or you charcoal the edible wood, and you can just literally just like a drumstick just eat it like that. And that's how ancient peoples did it. There's a legend, and I named my personal charcoal product after this. It's the legend of the coal biter, which I learned from the Icelanders. And that was the runt of the litter who was least capable of dealing with the wind and the elements and the rain and the sleet and the snow and all those things you have to deal with in the Arctic, and would stay home and tend the home fire, and would eat the bits of charcoal around the edge of the fire, the willow pieces and the birch pieces. And eventually a startling metamorphosis would occur. Charcoal is a metamorphic substance. I really want to emphasize that. Meaning if like you think you're washed up, or you're too weak, or you're too old, or you're not good enough, or whatever you think you are, you start eating charcoal on the regular and watch what happens to you. Its essence is metamorphosis, right? It's metamorphosized wood, an edible wood, and so it allows you to eat the wood and get that energy. I'm absolutely enamored with it. I am in love with it, so much so that I use it for farming. I use it for any problem of any odor in the house, throw charcoal on it. You have odors in your fridge, throw charcoal in there. It's crazy like that. You got problems with old toilets, 65-year-old toilets have a smell coming out, no problem. Start flushing charcoal down there, and it will neutralize all of those gaseous odors, all the odors. And I mean crazy stuff like, I live in an old house, my farm, not here in this place, but in my other farm. And it's like it's a 70-year-old house. It's old. And there's odors that come out of things, or there were. And we finally just were like, shovel the charcoal down there, flush it down the toilet, keep putting it in there. And it absorbs it. That's the end of it. So that's my spiel.
I really appreciate David and the herbs. I primarily use herbs rather than supplements. I prescribe a lot of supplements because people at different levels. I don't even take digestive enzymes anymore. Something happened and my digestion keeps getting better and better, so I stopped taking digestive enzymes. I use the tonic herbs. And I use I'm going to say the top 5, and they're all connected with longevity, well-being, and building the brain. So those are that. And then goji berries are actually an herb. And so that's part of what I do, is a fair amount of, a certain amount of goji berries in the morning as my tonic herb drink, so to speak. There's some interesting research by a man named Dr. Pop from Germany, and he measured people's health by measuring the biophotons, which is the radiation you're giving off from your body. And junk food eaters have 1,000 biophotons, and if you're eating good cooked organic food, 23,000. If you're a baby, 43,000. If you're a live fooder, 83,000. But if you add the tonic herbs, you're up to 116,000. So tonic herbs make a really big difference in terms of your vitality and really frequency. And he did it more concretely, measuring biophotons, energy that the body's giving off. So I'm really into herbs, and particularly, I guess, very specifically the tonic herbs. So that's how I look at it versus medicinal herbs, except when you need them for a particular problem or something like that. So that's the number one thing that I do. I also do, I do take vitamin C. I take a very all natural C. It's got the rutin and hesperin and everything, not ascorbic acid, which really isn't vitamin C. I do, basically, I do food concentrates. So I do food concentrates that will have some higher levels of B vitamins in it. I do take a vegan vitamin D. Because the truth is most people, 85% of the population is deficient in vitamin D. So that's something that I think is important, particularly with the whole COVID trip. It's like, okay, well, fine, you're taking your vitamin D. So those are kind of the main things I do with the herbs. Lion's mane, as David mentioned, is another herb, but it's really great for your brain and your mind. So that's my feeling about that. I'm taking less and less supplements and more the herbal extracts. I just find that easy to do. But that's my main kind of input or intake with it. I also take silver every day as well. So what I found is your body gets more and more attuned. You need less and less of things. So you go from a few meals a day now to one meal a day, but a little goji berries in the morning with my herbal combination, and that's kind of how I kind of approach it. And I like taking less and not so often, but I'm not doing it because of being lazy. It's just like it works. I kind of observe what goes on, and that seems to work. The tonic herbs are the key. So that's what I have to say about that.
Dr. Cousens, what about algae like blue-green algae, chlorella? What about bee pollen? What
Okay,
about
I do take, and I have taken since 1982, the blue-green algae from Klamath Lake. I did a lot of some of the initial research on it, and I actually forgot that. I take like a teaspoon of that a day, and I think it's good. I don't really take the spirulina or chlorella. They just seem a little heavy for me. But those are good things for people who need a lot of protein. I don't need as much protein. So we have to be careful. We are unique individuals. We're not a bunch of cows, and we have to individualize our diet. So I'm talking about, the trend, but definitely thank you for asking that, because the blue-green algae has many positive ramifications. It's really good for brain. It's really good for focus. Kids in Indonesia who took it for 4 months upped their IQ by 8 points. So there's a lot of things like that. The other thing I do take is iodine. I take aluminine, which is the most potent antiviral, which is important these days, and antibacterial and antifungal. So that's something that I take during, I just take on a regular basis. And the antiviral part is pretty important at this point. So that is a supplement in a sense where most people are iodine deficient. About 95%, 75 to 95% of the population is iodine deficient, particularly if you come from the Great Lakes area where I grew up. So that's another really important thing that I take is the aluminine, which is a scalar wave activated iodine. So
what about bee pollen?
I occasionally will take bee pollen. At this point, it's about once every 2 weeks. But it's a really good supplement because it has all the, incredible amount of enzymes. I do want to say right now, I'm not doing it, but is the systemic enzymes, I think, which David was referring to, that aren't for digestion, but they're anti-inflammatory, and they break down excess protein in your body and generally have anti-cancer qualities, and break down tumor. And so that's something I do take as well. I don't take, now you got me going again. I don't really take any acidophilus. My wife makes great kimchi, And I think that to me is the natural way of bringing it in is just a nice thing. So I like to have a little kimchi every day, a tablespoon or so.
What about vitamin A and DHA?
Well, vitamin A is, I think, important, and vegetarians, vegans don't get very much of it. I think it's good, particularly during the COVID time, because it's very good for upper respiratory lining of the cells and sinuses. So I think that's good. And the DHA, EPA, now that you mentioned it, the long chain omega-3 fatty acids are very supportive to brain development. And I do take that kind of it's not as a baseline, but I take it. I think it's I think it's important, particularly with the assault on the brain today from all the things that are happening. I think the DHA is the main one to be taken, but usually they come together. And I take it from yellow algae. I don't take it from fish.
And what about magnesium, zeolites, and selenium?
Good. So I shared the core. Magnesium, depending on the person, but 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium. I haven't been taking magnesium, and I'm surprised I'm not getting spasms. There's a time when I did take magnesium a fair amount. I feel people get muscle cramps and spasms. It's a must. So that would be something that in general is a good thing, although I'm not doing it really right now. And the zeolite, I don't exactly see as a supplement, but it is something I do take. Again, not as much as what I used to do. So it's not on my front line, so to speak, but we live in a very toxic environment. The zeolite gets out the radioactive contamination and lead, mercury, cadmium type things. So I think it's a generally good thing to do, particularly if you're, depending where you're living. If you're living in the country, it's less of an issue. So did you ask about selenium?
Selenium.
I'm not taking selenium right now. I think it's good to alternate, but E and selenium make a good combination. Again, it's a tremendous antioxidant. It's not, again, in the front line. Okay. Kind of what I share is the core, and the rest are something if I feel I need it.
Okay, thank you.
And everybody's different. So what I'm doing is different than what somebody else needs.
Thank
All
you.
right, this is my turn, right? So I would start off with an anti-inflammatory. Obviously, David, thank you for the wonderful endorsement of Boston Americas, and I'll cover that in my lecture. But it's an anti-inflammatory that people take because most people have some kind of pro-inflammatory condition. Anything that has the word itis, this means inflammation. So there's 200 different type of itises that we have, and so we want to make sure that we're lowering inflammation safely, avoiding any non-steroidal anti-inflammatory as much as possible, such as ibuprofen and Motrin and Advil and Aleve and naproxens and Tylenols and stuff like that. So that will be my lecture coming soon on this conference. But taking the Boston Americas as an anti-inflammatory because we all want to lower inflammation. Vitamin D is super important. So what Gabriel was talking about is absolutely true. But we want to also test the vitamin D because really, what the data will show. I'm an evidence-based data guy, as you'll know. So even in my book, there's 1,500 references to the scientific studies and investigative journalism articles because we have to look at not only just taking supplements, but can we measure the benefits of taking something, right? Obviously, like with an adaptogen, you can take them to say they feel better energy, for example. But on vitamin D, it's very simple because we can see is their deficiency getting enhanced? Is it actually getting to the optimum range? The data will show that we want roughly between 60 and 100 on the blood test, preferably on oncology patients that I see a lot, more of a 70 as kind of the magic number. COVID data was roughly better at 60 than anything and above than anything else. And even people that are coming in the same comorbid conditions, those people who had higher vitamin D levels had less symptoms or less long-term problems with exposure. So we know that the vitamin D is a non-specific biomarker of your immune system. So the simplest and cheapest thing, public health-wise, worldwide, that other governments are actually doing is actually ensuring that vitamin D gets out to the population. There was a study that just came out just about 3 weeks ago in Germany. They show that 30,000 cancer deaths just alone in Germany would be prevented if they give vitamin D. And in fact, now they're looking at a program where the government's actually going to provide the vitamin D because it's dirt cheap, right? Super cheap, and then they're going to see they can save, I think it was almost like 300 million euros just by that and save that many deaths. That's just on cancer. We're not talking about all these other diseases. So these are simple public health measures that, everybody should be taking a vitamin D. But more importantly, remember, it's a fat soluble vitamin, meaning it absorbs 60% better with fat. A, D, E, K are the ones that are fat soluble, meaning you take the vitamin D with your largest, fattiest meal. So if you're having a little avocado or nut butter or having a little bit of olive oil in your salad or something like that, that's the meal that you should be taking it with because it's going to absorb better. So taking it is one thing, but actually testing, now anybody that has osteoporosis, osteopenia, the insurance will cover it. Anybody who doesn't, ask your doctor, because what you want to be doing is not just taking it, but are you in the therapeutic range? Because that's something under $15 in general can really prevent so many things. 60% reduction in chronic diseases when you hit this targeted range. So that's an amazing thing. Same thing with the Bosmeric. We're lowering 97 different mechanisms of inflammation, right? We have a 20-minute onset of action and 8-hour sustained release. So how can we, reduce a headache or back pain all instantly within 20 minutes and last over 8 hours? Bosmeric will help. So those are my favorite two. Second thing is, from immune system strengthening, not a hyper response, but strengthening, I give something called Glucan 300. It's a polysaccharide that's actually grown on culture. Now, when we look at mushrooms, now David loves mushrooms, Gabriel loves I love mushrooms. I love to actually eat more mushrooms, by the way. It's because every mushroom has a part of the mushroom, which is a polysaccharide called a beta-glucan. About 20% on average is what we can extract from the plants. And so those are very helpful for immune. That's why mushrooms, you look at all these mushroom formulas, immune formulas, there's a mushroom. Now, each mushroom has its own effect. Some of them are adaptogenic. They help with fatigue. Some of them are like lion's mane, help with brain function. Some of them help with breast. Some help with other aspects of the body. So when it comes to looking at those specific, individual aspects, that's when I'd recommend a specific mushroom supplement, or even putting it as a food, eating those mushrooms as much as you can. Absolutely. But when I look at stimulating and making sure, like you're lowering inflammation and lowering interleukins and aspects of the immune system, evidence-based wise, we've run a study. There's a study, actually 4 studies published, looking at all the mushroom extracts, looking at from an immune perspective, not from these other adaptogenic or brain health, but just looking at the immune system. Can we lower the inflammatory responses, and can we help stimulate, but not upregulate, but strengthen the immune system in vitro and in vivo, meaning in cell cultures and animals? And the Glucan 300 did better than all the top 60 products on the market today. And each of these studies, each of these other products usually have a study. Now, independently, we're running like which one is better. So if someone comes to me like, I want something for my immune system, vitamin D, Glucan 300, eat all the mushrooms, and then we give specific mushrooms, adaptogens, other things based on what they're interested in. Okay. I always like to look at also, when you talk about magnesium, when we talk about zinc, when we talk about, just general multivitamins, especially being plant-based, we need to be taking B12. So I just recommend a methylated B complex that we provide. 30% of the people have a methylation problem. Now, a liver formula, right? Because I always look at, helping the liver detoxify, because most people have elevated liver enzymes, fatty liver, or they're taking medications or chemotherapies or statins, or they're drinking lots of alcohol. So we're looking at how do we help, generate more AC glutathione in the body just by giving our liver formula, which is milk thistle, N-acetylcysteine, alpha-lipoic, and selenium. That's Dr. Bergson's formula, the father of alpha-lipoic, that I got when I was a medical student, I got to work with him. So it's just kind of a great admiration to that formula. But when I look at things in general, everybody, you give a top 10 list, is what we do in our clinic, which is quite unique, is that we test for these things, because I want food as medicine. So when we do nutrition testing, we're looking at your antioxidants, your B vitamins, your minerals. We're looking at your omegas 3, 6, and 9s. We're looking at heavy metals. We're looking at what is deficient. And then most likely, the nice thing about our testing is that I'll tell you, like, these are the foods to eat. I don't give vitamin A. I don't give vitamin E. I don't give vitamin C. Why? Because you can eat them so simply. right? So I want people to eat the foods that they can eat because then they're getting protein, fiber, phytonutrients, and the antioxidant. However, when there's a deficiency or there's someone has a disease and it's really low, it's hard to get it from the food. Supplements are supplementing the diet, not replacing the diet. And that's where, like, like Gabriel saying, over time, like he's taking less and less. Why? Because his diet has been perfect. He's improving his diet every day for decades. So therefore, like, his food has become his supplements. It's become his nutrition. It's become his medicine. So he doesn't need to have as much, right? Now, when we see people, though, I like to target it because I don't want to be like, oh, just take a bunch of things. I'm very targeted and very specific. So we measure microbiome function, and we're looking at food sensitivities. We have to look at and individualize what product that we provide, what foods we want to strengthen more. We all want to move plant-based, but you can still have sensitivity to plants. You can still have an allergy or sensitivity to a soy or corn or wheat or tomato or avocados. So we want to look at everything, and then we design like a health program. Like, what is your individualized, do you have even genetic metabolism issues? Right. So if we understand that, we know like what we can do to help rebalance that, because otherwise people kind of just shotgun approach, taking tons of tonic herbs. I love it, by the way. Taking tons of tonic mushrooms. I love it. There's no harm in that. You're going to feel better. But I like to dig further. Why do people have dis-ease? And why they're having their disease and their symptoms, and looking at what are the underlying triggering mechanisms, dysfunctions, and imbalances, and restore those functions, and make food as medicine the priority number one. And then we fine tune it by looking at what they may need. And then what we do is potency, purity, safety, efficacy. So just real quick, when we're talking about coated silver, right? Coated silver is unique because that is a patented form of colloidal silver. Not all colloidal silvers are the same. Why? Because a recent study was recently published. You can go to PubMed, look at the comparative analysis of commercially prepared colloidal silvers, right? They took the top 14 colloidal silvers on the market that are on Amazon, that are selling, that you go to any health store in America, from Georgia to Alaska to New York City. And we all will see these brands. We all know them by name. Out of 14, 12 of them fail. Right? They're not nanoparticle as they claim, and they're not colloidal. They're actually ionic, which actually can cause dysfunction in cell function. So some of these things we've got to be really careful when people take it, because it may have a certain benefit, but taking it long term, So when we look at this coated silver, right now, I was really excited to announce that yesterday I was actually able to get a translation of an article which shows, because on that coated silver, it's finished a phase 1 trial study in Ukraine. So, we're looking at, moving things in evidence-based literature of looking at safety, potency, purity, efficacy. So when we look at ashwagandha, where we look at a ginseng, for me, it's looking at what are the studies, what are the components? Can we make sure that we are getting it at a level that people can get a more of a clinical effect? Taking these things as food is wonderful because it's never harmful. You're getting extra protein, vitamins, minerals, all the adaptogenic phytonutrients. But when people come to see me, I'm trying to turn all of those things into a medicine stronger than what they're just going to take off the shelf. Oh, I just got this at Walmart. I got this on, Amazon.com, whatever. I want to look at, what can we do to actually change a physical parameter, because we're measuring those things. So from our perspective, when we look at silvers, we got to be really careful. Even the zeolite that he's talking about, I don't recommend zeolites at all. Why? Because I was, 15 years ago, I was hired by a pharmaceutical company that was going to come from Europe, and they were actually giving zeolites, because zeolites help actually not only detoxify, right? We use it for waste management, we use it for pig farming, we use it for all sorts of things, right? To clear out things, but also they were looking at it taking things back into the cell. So pharmaceutical companies were looking at, and they hired me as a consultant because they were looking at, how do I take a drug in a smaller dose and deliver it into the cell? Interesting thing, they were actually launching it in Europe. They actually had 4 or 5 different products. They were taking like an antioxidant, giving it with the zeolite and delivering it. Now here in New Mexico, we have one of the zeolite institutes of mining. It's like it's a medical thing that they have like the historical use of zeolites here. And so I contacted them, and so we were looking at different mines all across Europe, all across the United States, because zeolites, you can get like a ton of it for like $20, $10. It's just basically it's mined from the dirt. But the problem is that we started to find out is that as much as it's binding from the environment, it binds things that we don't need from the environment, like radioactive material. And so when they were giving it as a supplement, they sent it out of test market. Even the 3 top people of the company, 2 of them died. One of them came down with the autoimmune disease within 3 weeks of trying the product. And the reason being is because now we find out that it's binding things in the environment. So that's why it's good for radioactive waste, but also when it's in the earth, it's already picking up things in the environment. So I'm really, I have to be really cautious when we're talking about products, because people can talk about products all the time. And there might be safer ones out there, but when I see like multi-level marketing and direct marketing companies like that, I get really nervous, because I'm looking at potency, purity, safety, efficacy with everything we provide.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so aside from diet and supplements, what are the 5 to 10 most important things we can do to prevent health issues in order of importance? So in other words, there's a lot of things we could do. We could do yoga, we could do grounding, we could do jogging, we could do rebounding, we could do acupressure, acupuncture, colonics. There's all kinds of things we could do. But if someone is really serious and wants to have a protocol that every day is going to do the most to keep them healthy and happy and filled, we can't really do every single thing. So from all your years of experience, all the things you've tried, all the things that you know about, have studied, researched, watched, if we really want to get the most bang for our buck of our time and money, what are, outside of diet, outside of supplements, and outside of fasting, what do you consider the most powerful things a person could do to prevent health issues and to reverse them if they have it? What would be your protocol in order of the most important things if someone's setting up their daily protocol for the next 20 years?
Great. Okay, I guess I'll jump on that one. First thing I would recommend is get and measured, like timed, at least 1 hour in nature, not with your phone, not with devices, not with anything, but actually get into nature. And the reason why is because in buildings, in these big boxes that we're living in, there's just the fractal patterns of nature are disturbed. And so when you get back into the fractal patterns of nature, it has an uplifting effect on your spirit, has an uplifting effect on your whole body. In fact, recently, a friend of mine has been doing crystallization experiments next to natural objects like crystals, like crystallizing xylitol. And on the other hand, was crystallizing xylitol next to cell phones. It's really interesting how disturbing the fields are around the cell phone versus, say, amethyst. And this is something that just naturally happens when you're in nature. Your cells are multiplying all the time. They're looking for cues of ether forces or I would guess pattern forces that are around you all the time. And when it's that cell phone constantly, your cells probably are going, God, can this stop? And when it's a tree, your cells are going, whoa, finally, let's pattern in with this tree. So that's number one. Number two, I'm really a big fan of planting things, growing things, and getting involved with nature in that way. So some people are really good at growing like kimchis, and some people are really good at growing, so they're good at growing bacteria. Some people are really good at growing kombucha. Some people are great at junds, and they're more bacteria and yeast growers. And I've met people who are just genius at that, but couldn't plant a tree to save their lives. So we have to find which one of these things we're into. Maybe it's sprouting, and maybe you're really good at that. You have to try them all, and you find that out. But when you have that connection to growth, I guess that was the point I wanted to say. That's a real spiritual thing. It's a real comforting thing. It's like having a relationship with a tree. I was recently at my uncle's house, and we had planted a tree there in 1978. He bought for $1 at the local place down the road. That tree is incredible now. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, I hadn't been to this house in like 20 years. And it was just incredible to see this tree that we planted in 1978. Now, what it looks like now, it actually took two of me to hug it. And that was astounding to see that. So planting things, growing things. What would be number three? I like the idea of grounding. I do a lot of grounding. I always think about it when I've been in cars for a long period of time. I like to get out barefoot. I like whenever the ground is wet or it's conductive, you ground better. If you like to sun gaze, I'm a huge sun gazing advocate. And that's another one you have to kind of just step into a little at a time. You can't suddenly just go, I'm doing a 21-day sun gazing challenge. It's something you just go like a little bit at a time, but I will go the extra mile to sun gaze and barefoot on stone. So normally with grounding, you want to be on wet surfaces more because that's really how the grounding happens, especially if you like jumped in the ocean because it's electrolytic, immediately affects you emotionally because all those electrical storms of emotion, as soon as you jump into that cold ocean, they're gone. And that's a beautiful part of grounding, is it can just clear your mind. That's why I do cold water plunging, because it just instantly, as soon as you're in the water, so walking on barefoot, that's one thing for grounding, but getting in water, that's a whole nother level of grounding. It's a better way, I'd say. But one of the other things about grounding is you want to be either wet surface or have some electrical connection with the earth. In that way, the drier the surface is, the better it is for sun gazing. So that's what I was trying to differentiate there. So like standing on dry stone or standing on gravel is great for sun gazing. Standing on dry sand at the beach is great for sun gazing, but standing on wet grass isn't. And I know that from years of experience, 20 plus years of experience sun gazing. There's something about that. You want to be like a capacitor, but you don't want to be a current. You don't want that charge to pass right through you. When you're standing on a dry surface, it doesn't really pass right through you. It passes into you, and you're more like, it's more of a capacitor effect or a dam effect, where the energy can charge you up but doesn't pass through you so quickly. What else would I put on that? I'm really a big fan of inversions. I'm so glad that Gabriel brought that up early on. Getting upside down is just completely magical for you. It's one of the most important things. That's why, like, when I first came in here after all the driving and chaos of days, first thing I want to do is I want to lay down and get my legs up. And I know Gabriel could go for hours just talking about that subject alone, because he's a huge fan of it. It is really, really important part of longevity to get inverted. The yogis figured it out. It's absolutely easy to do. All you have to do is just get your legs up and get your hips up too, better. If you can get into a yoga pose, better. If you can get into a handstand or headstand, better. But, step by step. That's a big one on my list. What else would I say? I would say, I think the practices of yoga and all of the different, the 8 limbs that's just a beautiful thing. It's a treasure that's been delivered into our lives. So not to explore that, I think is a waste. There's so much healing knowledge there. And so it's so powerful. So the yoga practice, the 8 limbs of yoga, the whole system is worth your investigation. Something came up in my mind just as I was saying that was about spring water hunting. I do a lot of wild spring water hunting, and that's a practice that I really recommend. The magic of what a spring is, what's going on at the spring. A friend of mine in Arizona spent many years hunting reishi mushroom in Arizona, and he's like, dude, you're not going to believe this. And I was like, I'll believe just about anything at this point. And he said, I've hunted reishi mushroom all over Arizona, and the only place it grows is at the source of springs. I've heard those stories for years. By the way, in Texas here, the reishi grows it's in the sycamore family plant group, which is really unusual. And I found many reishis right here in this state in Texas growing out of the ground. That has really been interesting, and that's really a fun thing if you can get out. In the book, I'm trying to think of this book, Solzhenitsyn's book. It was the Cancer Ward from 1968. Got translated into the English language from Russia, and that was the book that introduced the idea of chaga mushroom to Western people. Even though chaga grows all over the West, it grows over the whole circumpolar region of the whole Earth. It wasn't really popular over here. And in that book, he describes it, chaga heals you in 2 ways. One is its own chemistry and the magic of its own effects on your immune system, et cetera. The other side of it, and equally as important, is it gets you out into nature looking for it. And that is a big key, I think, right there, is getting out and being part of the embedded mystery and embedded magic of the magical reality of nature. So that's a big one. Geez, I don't know if we could get to 10. What else would be on my list? Of course, I'm a big fan of all electronic medicine. I've got, like right here, I've got my whole ozone system I'm about to set up, which I'm really excited about that. I've done many, many different types of ozone treatments. I love it, actually. I'm also a big fan of pulsed electromagnetic field mats, which I mentioned, Dr. Pai's Beamer. He gave me a ride on that before our trip. And those are great. Those are wonderful pulsed electromagnetic field devices, PEMF devices. And I know Gabriel's a huge fan of those too. And then little things like my zapper. My zapper's in my car right now, but I do always have 2. So I'll show you that. That's another piece of the puzzles. Having a little electronic device like that on my body. So let's say I'm in an airplane and I have this on my body. Those electrodes are touching my skin. It's putting a little pulsation on my skin that is undetectable to anybody else in that aircraft. But definitely if there's any kind of respiratory viruses floating around, bacteria floating around that are looking for an opportune place to multiply, they ain't looking at me because I've got a surface charge on my skin that nobody else has. So I'm not a good target for them. I'm a bad target. They're going to go to another target. This is something I just drove all the way. In fact, that 15 hours I did the other day, I had a zapper on the entire time. Just now, this last 4 hours of driving, I had a zapper on the entire time. I'm a big fan of electronic medicine. It comes in many categories. There's a lot there worth your investigation. Pulsed electromagnetic field devices have a lot of research behind them and something you should look into. Okay, I could go on, but I think that's the best part of my spiel.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go next. But first, David, I need to know about the zapper. I didn't quite know about that you just showed. So,
So this, I got to get you one of these. This is my old zapper, though. These are out of print, so to speak. I'll get them up and running again. But what this is actually, when it touches your skin, right? You don't. Another person would go, "There's nothing happening there." But if we measure, like we took a what are those things called? A voltmeter. If we took a voltmeter, you'd notice that what's going on with my skin is completely different than the person next to me. So it puts a surface charge, or basically a slight negatively charged electrical field on me. So all the positively charged stuff, like viruses, mold spores, bacteria, they look at me and go, "Nope, it's a bounce," because they're more attracted to where there's a higher amount of static electricity or a weaker energetic field. Anyway, I'll let that. Well, that was my 2 seconds on that.
now we need to communicate in that. So, I kind of weave this into a lifestyle, but it's based on doing a lot of studying. But I can't say love is a lifestyle, but relationship has been shown to be very, very powerful for longevity, protecting against depression in major ways. Okay. People connected to groups in some way, even them, there's less depression. So relationship is important, which we call love. And love is a big factor in being healthy. So I want to emphasize that. Now, that's not something you can prescribe, so to speak, but love is really, really important. So that's the first thing I would say as part of a lifestyle. Now, I kind of do a few things. I think it's good to have a certain amount of physical exercise, maybe, but most people over-exercise, but maybe 20 minutes, 5 times a week of fast walking, things like that. I also use the yoga. No, so exercise, a little tightening. The tree yoga is a little bit expanding. Yes, David, I do stand on my head still, and I'm still doing handstands. Okay. And also inversions longer with my feet up against the wall, the hips up. So those are important things to do. And then now one of the reasons it's important to balance with a chronological age, people's ability to balance diminishes. So if you're practicing standing on one foot or standing on your head or doing handstands, you're working on your balance. That's actually quite important in the bigger picture. It's subtle, but it stimulates the overall nervous system. So we have love, we have the physical, and the yoga that allows you to be more flexible in your life, because with age, there's a contraction and you want expansion. Now, the other expansion is pranayama, breathing exercises. Without oxygen, and David already mentioned it, without oxygen, we don't do so well, as you may have noticed, for most people. So I do breathing exercises, again, 6 days a week. So there's a kind of consistency in the process. But pranayama is very, very important. I also meditate. And there's no question that research has shown that people are meditating. I meditate a little longer than this, but I meditate 1 hour twice a day. But even 20 minutes twice a day for 5 years, and your physiology is 15 years younger. And also, meditation has been shown to increase your brain size by Harvard. So meditation is a big important thing here. the being out in nature is important. I start my day, besides watering the plants, we just on Earth Day planted 7 trees, which is actually a lot of work. And watering the trees every day, there's a connection with nature, plus where we live is somewhat in nature. So that is important. Nature has a life force of its own that can kind of activate you, and that's really good. Watering trees every day is really good. So that's a really important thing. Now, what I'm also saying is just a daily flow. Now, I spend time barefoot. I do my prayers. I try to combine a few things. So I do my prayers outside, standing on the dirt. Okay, and although I walk barefoot most of the day, particularly in the morning and mid-afternoon, I'm on the dirt doing prayers. Now, it's not a huge amount of time, 10, 15 minutes, and I'm facing the sun. Now, I'm not doing sun gazing per se, but I'm facing the sunlight because the sunlight stimulates all the organ systems. So what I've tried to do is not make them separate practices, but just, okay, you're doing your prayers, you're facing the sun, you're standing in the dirt, you're pulling the energy up from the earth. There's a kind of consciousness that you're moving with energy, and then you're taking a walk, you're out in nature, you're watering the trees. So I've tried to weave it into daily life. Meditation is part of that weave, the yoga is part of the weave, the love is part of that weave. So those are just, I'm going to call it a natural way of living that supports kind of all your aspects. I don't think that's 10 per se. I do a little less with the electronics, but as you saw, I'm fascinated with what David just pulled out there. I didn't know about that. The beamer is also very good to use the electromagnetics. So that's another thing that, again, moves it in. It's a nice time to lay and be quiet. You do it 10 minutes or 14 minutes. So that's another thing of using some of the electromagnetics. Another thing I do that I think is important for health is it's a little defensive. We're hit by a lot of radiation. We're hit by 5G. We're hit by a variety of things. So I've kind of looked at, again, simple systems, and I've come across the tachyon work, and you basically can make your house 5G proof, so to speak, or minimize it without going into details. You make your car that way. There's certain things, devices you can do, and then wearing the tachyon, it works in a particular way. It doesn't make you bulletproof, but it creates a field that allows, in a sense, it diverts the radiation. It kind of absorbs it. So I do a lot of tachyon as a way of dealing with these unnatural forces. And I think we have to include that in our thinking. It's like, well, 5G is not exactly natural, and it's really not so good for you. So you want to do something to protect yourself in that way in your house, in your home, and so forth. So I use a variety of tachyon type things to neutralize it, also neutralizing being around the computer. Right here next to the computer, I have sunspots, which are very, very powerful. I'm giving everybody a hint of it. But I have that. So I'm sitting here with the computer, and I have the tachyon disc on the computer. You can't see it because it's behind. But so we do have all the electricity tends to create an incoherence in the field, and the tachyon makes it coherent. So those are kind of another way. I look for simple ways, and I try to move it into my lifestyle. So we have a tachyon disc on our fuse box. Simple. So I try also not to think about it. I try to set it up, and it's all happening. So I think that's what I want to share. And really, I want to bring in the love as being very important. And I'm very blessed to be very much in love with my wonderful wife. So it's really good. Um, and we also share this lifestyle. So there's a supportive thing with that. And I think it's really important that way to have a certain amount of social support, different ways for the overall thing, not just for your health in a certain way, but also to maintain your habits and so forth that are healthy. So, and spiritual joy. It's good to be having a good time all the time. If you aren't having a good time, you have to look at why you aren't having a good time and change what you're doing so you are having a good time.
All right. So I agree with both of them. And in fact, it's funny because in my book, I have 10 steps, and those are many of the steps. And so if you want to go further, like, and learn about, love, community, things that David was talking about, grounding, uh, it's all in my book. In fact, I actually have all the resources and the references to that, because a lot of people here, it sounds kind of hokey, sounds kind of foo-foo, new agey. It's like, no, here's the data. You do this is what's going to happen. Improves natural killer cell function. It's going to lower inflammation. It's going to increase brain-derived nerve growth factor. It's going to help improve your immune system. So these are all the things that we talk about. I like yoga, but it's understanding the trueness of yoga. So there's a lot of like what I call mick yoga that's being sold. There's like people, you go to the gym and they're playing music and they have a mixtape and they're dancing and they're kind of just like rocking it out. That's not real yoga. Just doing simple sun salutations. I would just like learn how to do simple sun salutations, do 10 rounds of that. If you can get to 10 rounds, that's a lot of work. But true yoga starts off with pranayama. So everybody's talking about like pranayama and meditation, but that's when you do appropriate yoga, if you're taught correctly, you start off with the pranayama, then you go into your sun salutation or your routine, and then you do the meditation. Yoga is actually preparation for meditation. That's the definition, really. And so you're preparing the body to then get to the mindfulness place of that you're doing to your yoga. But what you want to understand is that yoga is just not a physical exercise. A lot of people think, oh, I'm just trying to do some cardio yoga, some kind of whatever, goat yoga, beer yoga. It's terrible what they're doing to yoga right now, because it's a true science. It's one of the branches in India that we give in Ayurvedic medicine. And so we actually have, in the hospital, we bring out the yoga doctor. There's pranayama for certain conditions. We can lose weight with pranayama. We can actually also increase blood pressure with pranayama. There's different aspects of what we do pranayama in the morning versus different pranayama that you do in the evening to help calm. So there's things that kind of lift you up. There's things that actually bring you down. So it's not just a simple breathing technique. There's a science behind that, how we move the energy, how we actually flow with the energy. When people do the asanas and they're doing, say, a simple sun salutation, it's flexion extension, it's moving lymphatics, it's actually building bone density, it's actually improving strength and balance. And this is where the problem we have in America, bone density problems and people falling and breaking the hips, but no one's talking about what do we do to prevent them from falling. Well, when you look at countries like India that do yoga, second largest population in the world, they don't have the amount of hip fractures that we do. Right? Because everybody's doing this thing where they're sitting, David's sitting on the floor right now. So it's like, yes, because I'm sitting on this chair, I have more of a chance of falling because we're getting stuck with sitting down in chairs. We're not getting on the ground. We're not flexing. We're not extending. We're not moving this mobility. So yoga, if done appropriately, pranayama, do the asanas and do meditation, like literally that itself, plant-based diet, you're good. Now, everything else in my book, I do talk about energy devices. I do talk about grounding. I do talk about, community and love. And those are all important things. And we have studies for that. So for those people who want to get like a little deeper dive, like, oh, I know it's good for me. I feel it's good for me. Even having a pet shows that you'll live like 7 years longer. Why? Unconditional love. So Gabriel's completely right. When I was a resident, it's funny, I used to get in trouble in my residency because I used to use prescription pads, writing things out. And then I got in trouble because the cost of the prescription, they're saying, you're not writing the drug, but I would write love. I'd write, meditation. I'd write and I'd give the person the power by the prescription saying, you must do this so many times a day or so many times a week. And you need to tell your family that you need to get 10 minutes a day, that you need to be alone. You need to have some rest, take a hot bath or meditate or, do this, have the personal time to take to reflect, to heal yourself. So I used to write love all the time and then eventually got in trouble for that. But that's how important it is. Like we should be prescribing love. We should be prescribing exercise and meditation and yoga. And we we should be prescribing, like, you should have a community, some kind of group. We know that people that live in groups and communities, when we look at the blue zones where the people live past 100, right? The 5 areas in the world that live communities, it's all about communities, all about eating more plant-based foods. It's all about exercise. It's all being social. And what happens here in the Americas is the opposite. We're kind of like, we're old. We have horrible food. We end up in a nursing home. We're either isolated. Right? So we're doing completely opposite of what we're supposed to be doing. So those are the things, it's not like a top 10. Everybody wants these top 10s, but it's like, no, you have to understand, like, there's simplicity of healing. We're not biohacking healing. We have to understand the laws of nature. And these are the laws of nature. If you follow the laws of nature, nature returns in kind, tenfold, exponentially. This is where they're talking about grounding, being on the earth, feeling the earth, planting a tree, watering the garden. That's a return of it. It's like we're having this energy environment economy, and we're giving and we're taking. But what happens is all these other things that we're kind of doing conventionally, or just modernly, we're just taking, and that's where that can cause this imbalance and illness. So yoga, meditation, pranayama, obviously, and the things that Gabriel and David talked about is what I'd recommend.
Okay. Thank you. Before I ask the next question, could you each just take 1 minute just to tell people, if after this panel they want to follow up with you, what's the best way to follow up with you? Where's your website? How do they find you? How do they call you? How do they learn about your programs? What's the best way for someone to follow up with you?
Great. Okay, I'll start out with that one. Probably the best way to track me is probably on Instagram, David Avocado Wolfe. That's my most kind of mainstream stuff, and I have a lot of fun with Instagram. It's really become actually a lot more fun than Facebook. I don't really like Facebook that much anymore, even though they're both owned by the same people. It's just a better fit. Also, davidwolfe.com, DAVIDWOLFE.com. And one more thing I'll say is thebestdayever.com/links, LANKS. And that's where I kind of put my most updated stuff. Although I do need to update it. It's about 2 weeks since I updated it last time. But that's where I keep, like, whatever's happening right now is where I'll put it all there on my links site. Or with some people call those, what do they call it? They call it a link tree site.
Okay, for me, it's drcousens.com. That's really easy. And treeoflife.mn, mightynetworks.co. And that's like our community, because we have built an international community of people who are like-minded and needing and appreciating that communal support. So those are the two places, drcousens.com, treeoflife.mn.co. Then my books are out there all over the place. My newest book, Into the Nothing. It's a spiritual autobiography. It's another way of kind of tuning in. We've just moved to Israel and we're just setting up. And so we're not as organized. And then I'm doing regular teachings and transmission over the internet on a weekly basis in a variety of ways. So those are the easy ways to find me.
Okay, for me, you can go to sanjevani.net. That's SANJEVANI.net. That you'll learn information about our clinic and what we have to offer. I offer consultations all around doing Zoom. We've been doing this pre-COVID, so I'm used to that. We have people from all around the world. I had a family from South Africa yesterday. Day before yesterday, I had someone from Dubai, and obviously locally here in New Mexico and Georgia and New York and LA and Chicago and stuff like that. But it allows us that we can send kits out, we can do testing out, we can send product out. We do all the teaching. People can come here. We have a wonderful kind of all service center here. We offer Ayurvedic medicine fully with my partner, Maureen Sutton. She's an Ayurvedic doctor. So we do all the panchakarma here. I do neuroacupuncture, so it's specifically for neurological issues like MS, Parkinson's, and stroke. In fact, there's a movie called Return to Life that's just been released this past weekend. It's a documentary film on that, so we'll probably be posting that as well. I'm not really big into social media yet, so I'm going to learn from David, by the way, how to be more public and all that stuff. On our website, though, you'll see that there's a media channel. You'll have all the interviews and other lectures I've done, and we'll slowly start updating that as well. We also have a newsletter, so sign up at our website, because we do release information on health information. I always give updates on evidence-based practices. So if something comes up in the literature, something that we're offering, like here's the data. So if you go to our site, if you go to our sanjevanystore.com, you'll see that under every product, if there's data or research, we usually will have the PDF that you can download and look at the latest research. So like same thing on Bosmark, here's all the research now on even lowering inflammatory responses even during the COVID times and stuff like that. And also safety studies or efficacy studies, comparison studies as well. So that's where you also can go to aninflammationnation.com and get my book, or it's on Audible. And this year I'm proud to announce that we're going to be looking at a program of maybe turning the book into a docuseries or documentary, because it's something that we can explore all these aspects and avenues of what kind of everybody in this conference is talking about, all these different aspects of how to work with health. And if I can convert that into something that people can watch and just kind of enjoy, that's a good way to get more people healthier. So sanjevani.net.
Dr. Cousens and Dr.
One more thing I didn't mention, info@treeoflife.nu, info@treeoflife.nu. Simple way.
You could also go to our website, The Real Truth About Health, and we have a link for each of the speakers. So if you didn't get any of this, you can go through there. I know Dr. Cousens and Dr. Pai, you offer individual phone consultations if someone wants to set that up. David, do you do individual phone consultations?
I do, if somebody corners me. So sometimes I'll do it. If you catch me at the right time and I have enough time, yes, I'll do it.
Okay. So next question that comes up all the time and everyone's always trying to get an answer. What exactly, based on everything going on in the world in 2021, are you recommending that we do for water? What is the number one best solution for today? For everyone who's watching this, what do you recommend?
Drink it. That's the key.
That's a great way to start. You got to drink water, and you can see that one of the things I noticed from water fasting, and I think Dr. Cousens and Dr. Pai will agree, is how little water I'm normally drinking. I'm never drinking enough water. I mean, when you're on a water fast, I might drink 3 or 4 of these. I mean, not this brand, but about 1 liter of an amount. And I'm like, other days, I'm like, I'm not drinking that much. And that just tells me about habits of humanity where we don't drink enough water. So what I recommend is when you come home and you're like hungry, drink water. I just came in here after, just eating 3 mangoes. That was my trip food. And what I want to do, I want to drink water. I really recommend that as an instinct, a reflexive instinct. What type of water? I'm a spring water hunter. I've hunted spring water on 5 different continents and probably 350 to 400 different springs in the most outrageous circumstances and situations you could ever imagine. I really love it. I really recommend it. If you've got that in your heart and soul to go out and find where the water comes out of the ground naturally, it's really something special. And there's always something unique about each one. But in the long-term picture of the research on water, I'm really, especially when I'm fasting, doing a lot of deuterium depleted water, otherwise known as DDW water. Crazy research on that. It started actually in the 1930s with an American researcher who basically had overturned the scientific principle that all hydrogen was the same. That hydrogen, deuterium, which is a heavier hydrogen, it has a neutron in it if we want to get specific, but we could just think about it as heavy hydrogen, and tritium, which is even heavier hydrogen, are all the same. Actually, this guy, he's like, nope, let me check it out. He started sprouting deuterium oxide, basically H2O, but instead of it being an H, it's a heavy hydrogen. And he started using, actually, strangely, tobacco seeds. And he found out that tobacco seeds will not sprout, no seeds will sprout, and that deuterium and tritium are totally toxic to life. That led to a series of research discoveries that ended the whole project really up in Russia. And the Russians were trying to figure out, like, oh my God, if you have too much deuterium in your body, it's trouble. And that's really true. And the numbers around 156 parts per million, if you have that much water in your body, of the deuterium water, not hydrogen. You want the hydrogen water. Less deuterium, just to be clear about that. You want depleted deuterium. You don't want the deuterium out. At any rate, what ended up happening is the Russians figured out you had to water fast, and you had to water fast and dry fast, and water fast and dry fast for like 20 days. I mean, this is really intense stuff. It's very difficult for anybody to do that. But then came the Hungarians, and they found out through cancer research that that you could take a water like this, like a spring water like this, or any water, and fractionally distill it or fractionally freeze it. The deuterium water is the heavy water, so it's the last to come off in distillation. So you can just distill 90% off, get rid of that 10%, distill the other 90% off, get rid of that 10%, and keep doing that like 4 or 5 times. Suddenly, instead of having, say, 140 or 145 parts per million deuterium, which would be common for something like this, you suddenly have 85 parts per million. Now they did research on people who drank that with various different cancer diagnoses and 20 years of studies. And it's to me, it's conclusive. The more deuterium you have in your body, the more troubles. Now, why is that important out of all things? I mean, who cares? And deuterium, what's that mean? Well, you have more deuterium in your body than you have calcium, magnesium, and almost anything else, because you're mostly hydrogen according to our mineral theory. And therefore, you want that hydrogen to be the best hydrogen there is. And that means that you don't want deuterium and you don't want tritium. And so this is something to explore and look into. It's called DDW water, deuterium depleted water.
So, David, for those people that are not willing to go spring water hunting and who are not looking to take advantage of this new information, which is really interesting, and definitely some of us want to explore it. But for those people that are not and are saying, give me more options that I can use here, wherever I live, among the internet and the stores I shop at, what's the next best after that?
Well, if you had to, I would recommend getting if you don't have a filter in your house for all purposes, for cleaning up your dishes, for doing your laundry, for bathing in, you're going to become the filter, right? Either you get the filter, so it's filtered outside of you, or you become a filter, because the human body, and actually all mammals, we're all just a series of filters. We could say that about all animal life, even plant life. So we don't want our body to act as a filtration for all the chlorine and all the heavy metals and God knows what else is in normal water supply. So get a water filtration system on your house, and preferably something that works really easily, like a self-flushing system. And then the next step is, even that I'm not really happy about drinking, but I would be willing to take that water, if it's been properly filtered, then run it through charcoal filters. I use a Berkey. Look that one up. I think it's BERKEY. I'm pretty sure it could be BIR. But anyway, Berkey filters, just 2 big carbon filters that sit in a container, or ceramic filters, and then let the water drain through that. Then take that and charge it up under the moonlight, put a little bit of sea salt in there, a little bit of electrolytes, and revive it. That might be something you could do. And then what I love about all of that and everything that we're talking about, and what I love about this question is, water responds to our intention. We know that. That's a fact now from the research. So therefore, all this stuff that you do to make the water better, the water knows, it reacts to it. So the whole process of it all is actually really cool, because the water's going, oh, this person really wants healthy water, and the water will change and metamorphosize itself and become something different because of your intention.
And one step further, if someone says, okay, that's really good, but just tell me, should I go to this? Can I get distilled water in glass bottles? Can I get spring water? Is there any commercial thing for the regular person who is just drinking tap water now that you would say is still good? Like, is distilled water in glass bottles anything? Is that good? Is that a temporary step?
Well, DDW water is like quadruple or quintuple distilled, actually, and you can get that in glass. And sometimes I get that product. There's one out there called Divinia that I get in glass, and it's a good product. If I'm going to do this kind of a thing, like actually a bottle, I'm always going to go with glass. The problems of phthalates and BPA are really profound. I mean, right now I'm about to do a dive on phthalates and how really harmful they really are, how toxic the whole really thing is. So I am just such a fan of just going back to the glass bottles. That's really where we need to go. And if you need to get a spring water from the health food store, Mountain Valley spring water I like a lot. It's a little bit of a heavier one. It's got more minerals in it. If you like something lighter, I think it's called Sharky's. That's one comes from a deep fissure in the earth. It comes in it's not a green, it's clear. That's another good one. There's many good ones out there. I like, what else is another one I like? You can't get them in the US very easily, but Volvic is a great spring water if you can get it in glass. And it's got some great research behind it. And I could say that about many of them. There's so many good ones out there. I like Castle Rock from Mount Shasta. And a good friend of mine started that company. He's no longer there, but he started it. So it's a big deal. What water you're putting in your body makes a big difference, and make sure you select quality and put your intention in it.
So what I'll recommend, just real quick, just make it simple, from some people, like, because I agree with what he's saying, and and all of us are drinking from glass, which is great. Um, I always tell people, go to Environmental Working Group, ewg.org, and then type in the water database, put your zip code in, and they'll test. They've already done your city or your municipality testing. And so, just example, this week, with all the patients I've seen, we've had high uranium, and we're from New Mexico. We have testing here. So we have high uranium. We have, people get lead and mercury and arsenic, and or people who've had PET scans that have gadolinium, so that's still in their body. So there's a variety of things. But first, I always look at, what are you getting exposed to? Because then you can decide how much, because, money's an issue for everybody, right? So yeah, do I have a whole house water filter? Absolutely. Do I still reverse osmosis that after it's coming in? Yes. Do I then add trace minerals because we just stripped out all the minerals? Yes. Do I then structure the water? Absolutely. There's a level to that, but the minimum basic I would tell everybody is just get a simple reverse osmosis, because when we look at like just charcoal filters, and you look at in the Environmental Working Group, it's not going to take out every single heavy metal, or particularly like more of the contaminant, like uraniums and nitrates and radiums. It just won't do that. So they'll tell you that. Now, if you don't have that in your water, then a charcoal filter is fine. Even a cheap, simple one in your refrigerator will be fine. We always want to still, so I don't want always people to feel like they have to do everything, because that's a little bit like, I can't afford it, so then I don't do anything, right? Our goal is always to reduce your risk. And so the first thing is looking at your water report, EWG, it's all independently tested. Then look at, what your budget is. And like I had to do a whole house water filter because we had high iron and manganese coming in our water in our area of our town. We actually get red stains in our water. So that's really toxic. It's not good to be drinking high amounts of iron and manganese. So I had to get a special filter for that. But the average person, when you do a reverse osmosis, which is usually about $200 to $300, depending on the size and how many people and how many gallons of the family, it comes out to 2 cents per gallon. So you can't get cheaper than that. And when I look at bottled water, although I do like drinking glass and I do like mountain spring water, I do get things from our office we get in glass. But for the average person, even when they go to the health store and they're filling up these gallons, it's 25 cents to 45 cents a gallon. That's more expensive. We're buying bottled water that's more expensive than gas right now. People are buying like pre-bottled water in plastic, paying a high amount of water that does have phthalates, that have BPA, does have all sorts of things. Even when they reuse the plastic, you're getting more and more leaching from that water. So the idea is, I like to look at if you can reverse osmosis, add some minerals back. That would be the cheapest, simplest solution. However, obviously getting a mountain spring water, fantastic. Those are like, now we're like, upping the ante, structuring the water, upping the ante. But for the average person at home who's like, I live in an apartment, or I'm living on a minimal budget, do the water, check your water there and put a minimal reverse osmosis. Then later on, it's like, well, if I'm living in a home, I can afford it. Let me put something so that I'm bathing in this water. I want to make sure everything is clean. As you said, it'll save your pipes, it'll save your dishwashers, it'll save less on detergents and soaps. So it's ways like you're trying to protect the pipes of your home as well as your body's skin is the largest organ. So I'm a fan, but I always have to look at the economy of the patient, because some people are like, oh yeah, I'm buying a new house. Well, then it's definitely worth the investment because you're going to be there for a long time. Or I'm only here temporarily. Like, well, then maybe get a smaller unit. Like David has something, probably a sink, you can kind of probably move it, put it on a sink top, whatever. So anything that you can filter is better than no filter. But then at the end of the day, I kind of look at the data, say, what do we really need to take out for sure? Because where you live, in my book, there's a section just letting you know that talks about water. And each city, based on the amount of drugs that we use and that we eat and we metabolize and we urinate, goes back and the municipal comes in. So like Seattle has the highest amount of antidepressants in the water. New York has the highest amount of Xanax in the water. Las Vegas has the highest amount of hormones in the water. So if you live in Houston, right, the megapolis of cancer, right, where there's MD Anderson, Texas A&M, and Baylor, 100,000 employees of just treating cancer patients. That's a lot of chemotherapy going into patients, going back into the water system, coming in the tap. So we have to be using some kind of filtration system, because these things are not being filtered from municipal. So yes, we're talking about like chlorides and fluorides, and but now we're looking at like Prozac and methotrexate. That's coming in the water as well. So definitely where you live will depend on where your water is. If you can get a mountain spring supply in glass, that would be the perfect. But anything that you can do is always a risk reduction. So I don't want to put people like you have to do this, otherwise it's not. You want to do what you can afford and what you can do, small steps, and try to get over time a little bit better.
Okay, so my approach is trying to make it simple. I don't trust any water, even if it's a great mountain spring. I don't know about the pipes unless you're collecting at the spring. So I use distilled water. I can trust it. It's clean and clear. I don't buy it at the place where there's plastic. I have my own water distiller. Then I activate it. Then I put a smidgen of scalar salt in it. And that smidgen takes it back to kind of a normal level of minerals, because there's 82 minerals in that. Then I stir it and create a vortex to pull energy into it. Then now it's activated because you've organized it again. Distilled water is disorganized, very poor energy water. You have to activate it. Then, as David, but really both of you point out, I bless it. Mm-hmm. So I'm putting my energy in it to maintain it. So that's how I approach it. It's simple, and I don't have to think about it. All I drink is the distilled water, and that I've been upgraded and energized. That's how I handle it.
Okay. Next question. I've watched Dr. Cousens. We have conferences and he's come in person, and you seem very peaceful. You seem to be in a good state of mind. You seem very healthy. Dr. Pai, you seem like a very positive guy. I don't know you that well, but you seem to be positive and upbeat and happy, and it's really good. David, I've watched you lecture for years, and I guess you were very careful with your word choice. You seem to have really a super positive attitude, and I was never bored listening to you. You always had good energy and great words. So for those of us that really, we've been all over the green juices and the food and the sprouts, and we're really conscious of our diet, really conscious about exercising, we're getting outdoors, but we still don't have this beautiful attitude of gratitude and compassion and empathy and awe and positivity and love. And we really, really would like to make the change. And we have lots of habits where we complain and we whine and we're critical and we judge and we think we're more important or better than someone else. And we really would do anything we could to make a shift at this point in our lives, to use the power of our minds and harness it for all it's capable of. But we're really not that good at it. What is the best, most impactful, most effective way to get our minds to work the way to be the most massively positive and using it to be compassionate and empathetic? What do you recommend that we do?
I like that. I'll jump into that one first. The number one thing for sure is do more of what you love. Do more of what you love. Find a way to do more of what you love. You can't always do it. I just had to move a lot of stuff here into the Houston area. It was a big project. Months and months and months went by, and lots of different pieces of it. I didn't always like the jobs that I had to do in that process because I'm not a mover. I'm not in the box moving industry, although when I became an author, I found out I was. But there's, you have to go through the things that you don't always want to do in order to figure out a way to do more of those things that you want to do. And that's the whole game of life, I would say. So the more that you're in that place of what you love, the more you're in God's pattern for you. That's really what it is. It's like when you're doing what you love, all time disappears. You have complete connection with God. You're completely with source energy, and you are happy and you're fulfilled. I mean, that's the real word, is you're fulfilled. And so this is the thing that I think is really important, is to look at your life and go, how do I do more of what I love? A friend of mine, this is so fascinating. And then I'll turn it over to Dr. Pai, Dr. Cousens. He had spent a lot of years, smoked a lot of pot, did a lot of drugs, had a lot of fun too, but he finally had to go into the military because he needed to just get himself sorted out. He was just out of control, had no discipline. And after all of that, and then came back, tried to run businesses, tried to do this kind of work and that kind of work, and then finally realized that what he really loved was just sitting behind his telescope. He loved sitting behind a telescope for hours and hours and hours. And you'd think, how in the world are you going to pay the bills sitting behind a telescope in your backyard out there in East San Diego? And we later found out we grew up in the same town. It was unbelievable. And then eventually, as fate would have it, the most unbelievable things he filmed and put out videos and just crazy stuff. Now he's got an incredible podcast And he's one of the most iconic and interesting people on the whole internet. Very controversial sometimes and very middle of the road sometimes, and just loves to explore all the edges. But it came from something that would never pay the bills, what he really loved, which was being a telescope operator. But you know what? It did pay the bills, and it's now his whole life. So this is the thing: is you think there's no way, or how I'm going to pay the bills, or what's going to happen. You got to leap, and the net will appear.
That's beautiful, David. I love it. I start with meditation as primary, and I start more internal. And so when I experience the self, which is kind of more and more constant here, it fills me with, I'm going to say, non-causal love, non-causal spiritual joy, non-causal peace, non-causal harmony. And so it's always coming from within. And then the outside activates more of that internal love, joy, peace, and oneness. So that's how I approach it. And when you're in touch with that inner self, everything else begins to glow, and you begin to see the inner self of other people, which is kind of the foundation of love, because love is to see the authenticity of another person. And if you know your own self, you can see the authentic self of the other person. So that to me is the number one thing in my life as it's evolved. And then being the expression of the inner self, which is just what you were saying, is you be the expression of what is, how you're being guided in your life, and ultimately then to be living it. So that's how it works for me.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. I'm always like, yeah, I agree with both these guys. Yeah, because I do. What they're saying is true. Doing what you love, being what you're passionate about, things just happen. Like, I think everybody wants to have this, like, what is the 10 steps I need to do? Like, too formal. Like, what do I need? And that's where the problem is. I like to look at it as a journey. It's a process. And so self-reflection is important. But what I also find out is service. I think that once you provide service to others, in different, whatever means that is, right? Well, it doesn't always have to mean like I have to go to the soup kitchen and volunteer my time. Service to others, helping other people, right? It's kind of like, again, you're giving into the economy of love, or as Gabriel will talk about, or you're kind of putting your energy out there. It comes back. Nature's is rewards in kind exponentially. So a lot of times, even those people feel like, but I don't have much to give. We're not talking about money. That's the problem with everybody's like chasing money, I want to do this, I want to do that, structure. My my apps are telling me all these things I need to do. No. Service. Did you help someone today? Did you say hello to someone at the store? Did you just kindly touch someone, pat them on the back? Did you help someone cross the street? These are profound things that have a butterfly effect. And so what I look at is, for me, is that I'm improving outcomes of my patients, but that's through service. It's not, can you help someone help themselves on any level? And we don't have to judge it. It's nothing to be judged or scored. It's just doing it for being kind. And I think if people just really focus on that, things come back. It's, it is one of those laws of attraction, but it's like, because you hopefully one day or sometime throughout the days have someone do that to you. And that's where we hopefully have to have that, pay it forward aspect.
Okay, if you guys would each make a 1-minute closing statement on any final thoughts, anything you want to summarize with, anything you want to leave us with, you can each take 1 minute.
I really appreciate everyone who's on this call right now for having a commitment to your health. I think that's a really awesome thing, and that you're willing to step out of the box and research and look at different ideas and learn something new. I really appreciate people who want to continue to learn. And so I want to just be in a state of appreciation to everybody who's here. Now, of course, I could never leave an event like this or an online summit like this without saying, today is the best day ever. It's all you got. It's all you ever have. Tomorrow will never arrive. Yesterday is gone forever. It's today. Today is the best day of your life.
Beautiful. First, I want to thank you, Steve, for your good work in making this happen.
Thank you.
That's and your questions were really excellent. So kudos to you. I want to thank, it was really fun being with David, an old friend, and I'm really pleased to kind of wrap with you too. SUNY. So it's a good group, very enjoyable. So the final thought is to know yourself. When you know yourself, you begin to love yourself. When you love yourself, you're motivated to want to heal yourself. You're motivated to want to connect more deeply with your soul. And that's really the deep secret of life, is to be connected to your soul and let the expression of your soul emanate out into the world. Oh.
Oh. Yes, I want to thank everybody for attending this, because that's the first step. Just having the interest, taking time out of our crazy, hectic world, just to spend 2 hours to listen to 3 guys and 4 guys. And Stephen, thank you for the questions. Thank you for inviting us to speak, but just sharing perspective. I don't think anybody should be critical. I don't think people should try to think that they have to get everything that we talk about. Just do one step at a time. And that's why, like, hopefully, you know, when people get inspired, that's just the inspiration of change. So I hope that this was very helpful. Try to eat a plant-based diet, try to take your, keep your inflammation down, try to have community love, try to increase your immune system functioning. That's kind of the basic gist of getting better. I like to always end, in my book, I end with, a quote. I like to use a lot of music. I'm known as the rock doc. And when David came over, we played drums and we had a great musical time. I didn't know David was so good at playing drums as well. So I always like to end with a quote saying, it has to start someplace. It has to start sometime. What better place than here? What better time than now? So thank you, everybody. Bless you. Best of health.
Blessings to everyone.
I'd like to unmute everyone. Thanks. I'd like to unmute everyone so everyone could thank the panel.
Thank you.
Yay, we love
you.
you.
Good guys. Thank you, David. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you,
very
Sunny.
much.
You're so amazing.
Thank you, everybody.
Wisdom and love and kindness.
Thank you.
Blessings to your soul.
Stay
Blessings.
there. Thank you.
Very uplifting.